welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful weekend and got a chance to get outside and enjoy the beautiful weather. Today I am back with a story for you, along with our donkey friends. We've got Milo and Ollie here with us today. And if you remember, last week we left off with a vote on which book you wanted to read next. So drum roll please. Our winner, as hopefully you've already seen in Google Classroom, is Ralph S. Mouse, the third and final book in this series, one of very many that Beverly Cleary has written, but this is going to be the next book in the series and the last one that really explains what kinds of adventures Ralph will have. So on this adventure, are you ready for that? I know, buckle up, Ollie. On this adventure, we're going to find out about, of course, what sticky, troublesome situations Ralph can get himself into as he heads off, this time, to school. We'll see what his school looks like. Our school's looking a little different right now, but I don't know what a mouse school might be like. Let's see. All right, Chapter 1, A Dark and Snowy Night. Night winds, moaning around corners and whistling through cracks, dashed snow against the windows of the Mountain View Inn. You'll remember Garth brought him back to the Mountain View Inn after camp last time. Inside, a fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The grandfather clock, as old and tired as the inn itself, marked the passing of time with a slow tick-tock, tick-tock. That seemed to be saying, waiting, waiting. Everyone in the lobby was waiting. The desk clerk, the handyman, old Matt, who also carried the guest luggage to their rooms, Ryan Bramble, ooh, that's a new character for us, the son of the hotel's new housekeeper, and Ralph, the mouse who lived under the grandfather clock. Okay, so keep that in mind. Ryan is our new boy in the story, and he is the son of the new housekeeper. Kind of makes sense. They had some trouble with housekeeping before. The desk clerk dozed, waiting for guests who did not arrive. Matt leaned against the wall to watch television while he waited for the desk clerk to close up for the night. Ryan, sitting on the floor to watch television, waited for his mother to tell him to go to bed because he had to go to school the next day. Ralph, crouched beside Ryan, waited for the adults to leave so he could bring out his mouse-sized motorcycle. Unfortunately, Ralph's little brothers, sisters, and cousins, hiding in a woodpile and behind the curtains, were also waiting for that moment too. On the television set, a sports car crashed into a truck, shot off a cliff, and burst into flames. Wow! Without taking his eyes off of the screen, Ryan said, "There's a boy at school named Brad Kirby who would really like this movie. He has a BMX bicycle for motocross racing, and his father sometimes drives him to school in a tow truck." A police car followed the sports car over the cliff before Ryan added, "Brad isn't very friendly to me, though. He likes to be on his own." Ralph was more interested in television than in Ryan's problems. "If I had a sports car like that," he said, "I wouldn't let it run off a cliff." Ralph was an unusual mouse. He had listened to so many children and watched so much television that he had learned to talk. Not everyone could understand him. Those who were lonely children who shared Ralph's interest in fast cars and motorcycles and who took the trouble to listen were able to understand him best. Other children, if they happened to glimpse at Ralph, said, "Huh, I saw a mouse and he squeaked funny." Okay, so only some. Matt was the only adult who understood Ralph. "Yes, sir, that mouse is a mouse in a million," he often told himself. Ralph knew that there were not really a million mice in the inn, although he had to admit that in the wintertime, the mouse holes were a little crowded because his rough outdoor relatives moved inside to keep warm too. Ralph's mother said that they were a rowdy bunch that set a bad example for the more civilized mice. While Ralph and Ryan were enjoying a commercial for a truck that could zigzag without overturning, Matt strolled into a room called the Jumping Frog Lounge and returned with a handful of popcorn. He dropped one kernel in front of Ralph. "Thanks," said Ralph, who enjoyed nibbling popcorn while watching television. As the commercial ended, Mrs. Bramble entered the lobby. "Come on, my boy," she said to Ryan. "It's past your bedtime. You know the manager doesn't like you hanging around the lobby." Aw, Mom, just let me watch the end of this program, pleaded Ryan. I'll leave as soon as any guests arrive. At that moment, the rattle and crunch of a car with chains on its tires was heard. Must be snowy and slippery out there. Ryan rose and walked backward out of the lobby so he wouldn't miss the high-speed siren-screaming chase on the television screen. As he left, he gave Ralph a little wave with his fingertips, a wave no one else would quite notice. Ralph wished that Ryan could stay up all night like a mouse. As the car stopped in front of the hotel and the desk clerk roused himself awake, Ralph scurried under the grandfather clock to the nest he had made from chewed-up Kleenex, a lost ski lift ticket, and a few bits of carpet fringe that nipped off, not blown off, nipped off. Beside his nest rested his two precious possessions, a little red motorcycle and a crash helmet made from half of a ping pong ball lined with thistledown, gifts from a boy who had once stayed at the hotel. We know all about that one. Above Ralph, the clock began to grind and groan and strike. Bong, bong, as if it had to summon strength for each stroke. Ralph dreaded the sound, even though it was the reason he lived under the clock. The noise terrified his little relatives, who thought the clock was out to get them. As long as they were afraid of the clock, Ralph's motorcycle was safe. The car door slammed. Feet stomped on the porch. When Matt opened the door to let the two people blow into the lobby, a blast of freezing air sent Ralph's nest swirling around in bits. Never mind, thought Ralph, peeking out at the two pairs of boots, the kind known as waffle stompers, which had thick treads that held the snow. Do you have a room for the night? The owner of the larger boots asked the desk clerk. Let's see. I don't remember the hotel being very busy, do you? Murmured the desk clerk, who always behaved as if the hotel might be full, even though he knew it was not. Stop pretending, thought Ralph, who was tired of waiting. Well, the desk clerk ended the suspense. I can let you have room 207. Just fill out this card, please. Oh, we know about room 207. Ralph's keen ears heard the scratch of a pen and the rattle of keys. He winced when the clerk banged the bell on the desk for Matt, even though Matt was standing right there, waiting to carry the guest's luggage. Never mind, said one of the guests to Matt. We can find our room. The pair picked up their luggage and stepped into the elevator, leaving behind puddles of melted snow. Cheapskates, muttered Matt. Guests at this hotel were often insisted on carrying their own luggage to avoid tipping him and spending extra money. After the elevator door closed, Ralph worried that the puddles might dry before he had the lobby to himself. Time dragged on. The man in the red vest who worked in the Jumping Frog Lounge came out, yawned, and remarked that he might as well close for the night. The television station went off the air. Now, remember these stories were written long, long ago? Well, that would have been at a time where sometimes TV ended late at night. Nowadays, I know that that's almost never a thing, and that TV's always on and always has choices. We just choose to shut it off when we're done. But back then, TV was over when they had shared all the programs they had. Interesting, huh? At last, Ralph threw his leg over his motorcycle, adjusted the rubber band that held his crash helmet in place, grasped its tail so that it would not become tangled in his spokes, and then, because as everyone knows, a toy motorcycle moves when someone makes a noise like a motorcycle, Ralph took a deep breath and went, motorcycle noise please, and shot out from under the clock. Gradually, he picked up speed and zoomed through a puddle. Wings of water fanned out from his wheels. It was a thrilling experience. All of Ralph's little brothers, sisters, and cousins, hoping Matt would not notice them in the dim light, popped out from their hiding places to watch. Of course, Ralph had to show off. He took deeper breaths and rode faster, making puddles splash higher and leaving tiny tire tracks on the dry linoleum floor. Matt, who was banking the fire for the night, laid down the poker for the fire to enjoy the sight. Unfortunately, the little relatives were not satisfied. Not now. Once Ralph's indoor relatives had been happy to have Ralph push them up and down the halls on his motorcycle. But this treat was not enough for his rowdy outdoor relatives. They wanted to ride the motorcycle by themselves, so now all the mice wanted to ride. They came running and jumping across the threadbare carpet to the linoleum floor, squealing, "I want a ride! Give me a turn! Come on, Ralph! Get off and let us use it!" Doesn't sound like the nicest way to ask. Ralph started to whiz around in a figure 8 when his tires slipped and the motorcycle tipped. He lost control and landed in the icy, dirty water. The daring outdoor mice waded out to grab the motorcycle, but Ralph was quick. Dripping and shivering, he sprang back on the seat and rode off. "Motorcycle noise, please." Avoiding those clutching paws. If only he could make his relatives behave. "Go away! You're too little," said Ralph through chattering teeth as he swerved to miss Tiny Toes. "You would forget to hang on to your tails, and you'd get them tangled in the spokes." He tried to wipe his nose with his wet paw and wished mouse children had to go to bed at night like human children. "We would not." The rougher mice grabbed the motorcycle and brought Ralph to a halt. "And you're not so big. You fell down." All of the mice began to complain and argue. "You let us ride, or we'll tell your mother on you. She said you were supposed to give us a turn." Cousins closest to Ralph in age said it wasn't fair for Ralph to have a motorcycle. Nobody had ever given them motorcycles, and they were just as good as Ralph. Some of the meaner mice told him their mothers said that Ralph was spoiled and selfish and would probably turn out to be no good when he grew up. Ralph was hurt. "I am not spoiled and I am not selfish," he insisted, as he tried to drag his motorcycle away from all those clutching paws. Not the way to solve the problem, right? Mrs. Clears taught us many better strategies. In his heart, he did not feel selfish. He only wanted something that was his alone. A mouse so really had something he could call his own. "You're greedy," said a cheeky outdoor mouse. Then all the mice, down to the littlest one who was tangled in the fringe of the carpet, began to chant, "Ralph is greedy! Ralph is greedy!" Ralph finally lost his temper and squeaked at the top of his voice, "Beat it, you rotten little rodents! Try and make us." The outdoor mice were defiant, but Ralph could tell that they were not as brave as they pretended. Shocked and hurt by such strong language, the little indoor mice fell silent. They looked at Ralph with such sad eyes that Ralph was ashamed. "You said mean words," said one, his voice filled with reproach. "I'm going to tell on you," said another. "My mother wouldn't like you to call me those words." Ralph felt terrible. "Oh, come on," he said. "It's just that my motorcycle's wearing out. The tires are thin." Remember, Gark had said that. "And if they wear out, where am I going to get another pair?" The little mice would not accept this excuse. "We've never had a motorcycle at all," one of them said. "I know, but," began Ralph, not knowing how to finish. It was not his fault that young relatives did not have motorcycles. Still, maybe he had used language too strong for little ears. He was only trying to make his pack of pushing, shoving, grabbing relatives behave. Matt must have understood Ralph's feelings, for he came to his rescue. "Shoot," he said, loud enough to frighten the little mice, but not so loud enough to scare them. The words sent them scrabbling back to their hiding places. "Thanks," said Ralph. "Think nothing of it." Matt gave the fire one last poke before he retired for the night. He left the rapidly drying puddles for Ralph, who took another turn through them. Although the water still fanned out from his wheels, somehow the fun had gone out of riding for the night. Wearily, Ralph pushed his motorcycle back to the cave under the clock where it was safe. Even though he was wet and numb with cold, he lovingly wiped the mud and paw prints from his chrome spikes with bits of shredded Kleenex. When he began to wipe his exhaust pipes, can you see it? Can you picture it, Mila? You say hello? When he began to wipe his exhaust pipes, he discovered that they wiggled, loosened by all those tugging and grabbing paws. The rear wheel shock absorber was loose too. When Ralph had wiped all the mud and had polished his chrome, he rummaged through the remains of his nest for a bit of carpet fringe. Unfortunately, it turned out to be too thick for tying his exhaust pipes in place. He felt worse and worse as he began to groom his damp fur. His tires were so thin he no longer wanted to risk the wear of riding them on the rough surfaces of the carpet. His motorcycle was wearing out. None of his relatives were happy with him. They were going to tattle on him. In the morning, his mother would venture downstairs to lecture him on the evils of selfishness and bad language. She would also lecture him on his duty to set a good example for those little mice. Ralph pushed his nest together again. I am a bad mouse, he thought, filled with gloom and guilt. I am a rotten rodent, not my relatives. As he climbed to his nest, no arguing, there's no being rotten here either, my friends. As he climbed into his nest and curled up with his tail tight around his body, he wished he could leave the Mountain View Inn so he would never have to face them again. But how could a mouse leave in winter when there was snow on the ground and the wind howled? He would freeze, starve, or be blown away, or all three. Ralph shivered and pulled his tail more tightly around his body. Now, chapter 2 is going to be titled Ralph's Decision. So we'll see what Ralph's decision is, what he's going to decide with all of these problems happening around him. For now, though, I'll leave you hanging there. Remember to take time to check our Google Classroom. I know we have our meets coming up this week, so remember to check in and sign up on those sign-up sheets. We have some fun things planned. We've got a scavenger hunt this week and some games to play, and lots of learning to do, too. Keep up the great work in our Google Classroom, and don't forget to look for moments where you can show caring and kindness and to help one another during this time. Keep up the great work, my friends, and I'll see you all soon. Bye, guys.